Years after our divorce, I met my ex-husband again, and my life changed in seconds. I swear the room wasn't spinning. It was me. The moment I saw him, right there in the back of the conference hall, everything stopped. The world went quiet. My heart froze mid-beat, like it was trying to protect me from a truth I wasn't ready to feel again. And I remember thinking, no, this can't be happening. Not today, not here, not 7 years after our divorce, after all the rebuilding and healing and forcing myself to believe that closure was enough. But it was happening. Hi, I'm Gabrielle. Or at least, I'm the voice of Gabrielle. This is her story. Welcome to Possible Hearts. Here we bring emotional stories about love, heartbreak, marriage, personal growth, and second chances. Stories that stay with you long after the video ends. Before we dive deeper into this emotional journey, let me ask you something. If you believe in love, in healing, or in the possibility of rediscovering someone you once lost, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and tell us in the comments, which city and country are you watching from right now? We read every comment, truly. Okay, back to Gabrielle's story. I felt his gaze before I saw his face. A slow, almost fragile awareness crawling up my spine, the way you feel a storm coming before the sky breaks. And when I finally looked up for my presentation slides, I saw the silhouette I once knew better than my own heartbeat. Joe, my ex-husband, the man I once promised forever to. The man I walked away from because staying was slowly unmaking me. He stood there like a ghost wandering into the wrong story, soft light pouring through the windows behind him, outlining the shape of someone I used to love more than myself. He looked different, but still the same. Older, broader, a little broken in the eyes. Time had changed us, but not enough to dull the familiarity that hit me like a wave. I kept talking, God knows how, but my voice shook. My hands trembled as I held the remote, and even though I was presenting a new communication project to a room full of professionals, I couldn't breathe, not properly, because meeting my ex-husband again was the one thing life didn't prepare me for. Not after all the personal growth, not after all the healing, not after learning to love myself again. When the presentation finally ended, I heard applause, but it sounded far away, like water rushing in my ears. People stood, gathered notebooks, whispered to each other about deliverables and deadlines, but his eyes never left me. He waited, like he had been waiting for years. As the crowd thinned, Joe stepped forward, slow, unsure, as if approaching a wild animal he was afraid to spook. I gripped the podium, grounding myself because my legs felt fragile and the air felt too thin. The closer he came, the smaller the room felt. And when he finally stood in front of me, he swallowed, looked down briefly, then lifted his gaze with something raw and unbelievably vulnerable. I finally understand why you left, he said, voice low, steady, but trembling at the edges. And I'm sorry for taking so long. I don't know what I felt first. Shock, fear, anger, longing. All of them crashed together in one overwhelming heartbeat. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out, because those were the words I once begged him to say. Words I waited for until I couldn't wait anymore. Words I tried not to dream about, even when the nights got lonely. And now he was here, delivering the apology that could have changed everything back then. But now, I wasn't sure what to do with it. Before I could respond, a coworker called my name from across the hall, jolting the moment. I turned for half a second to wave, and when I looked back, Joe was still there, standing, breathing carefully, as though he didn't trust himself to do anything else. "Gabrielle," he murmured, "can we talk?" Just hearing him say my name again, it felt familiar and terrifying. I forced a breath into my lungs. "I don't know if that's a good idea." "I get it," he nodded, eyes dropping to the floor, then back to mine. "But I flew here because I needed to say something before I lose the chance again." Lose the chance again. The weight of that word almost cracked something inside me. My voice trembled. "Why now?" He hesitated. 1 second, 2, 3. The kind of pause that carries a secret. Then he said, "Because everything I built after you walked away, it fell apart. And for the first time, I had to face myself." I felt something shift inside me, like an old door creaking open in a house I swore I'd never enter again. Before I could ask what he meant, the event coordinator approached me, smiling politely. "Gabrielle, they're ready for you in the next room." I nodded, throat tight. "I'll be right there." When she walked away, I looked back at Joe. He stepped aside slowly, giving me space. "I know I'm the last person who should ask anything of you, but if you give me 10 minutes, I'll tell you the truth I should have told you years ago." My pulse hammered. My breath hitched, because this wasn't part of my plan, not part of the life I carefully pieced together after our marriage fell apart. This was the past knocking on a door I sealed shut. And yet, I felt myself wanting to open it. Just a crack. What truth? What changed? What could he possibly say now that he couldn't back then? I swallowed hard. 10 minutes, I whispered. His eyes lifted, hope flickering there, faint, but alive. And in that moment, I knew my life was about to change again, whether I wanted it to or not. But what he told me next shattered everything I thought I knew about our divorce. He waited for me outside the conference hall, leaning against the wall like he was trying not to take up too much space or too much of my air. People walked past him, attendees, coworkers, strangers who had no idea that, for me, the hallway had become the epicenter of a small emotional earthquake. When I stepped out, his posture straightened slightly, shoulders lifting as if bracing against a memory. He murmured, "Thank you." "For what?" "For giving me 10 minutes. You didn't have to." He was right. I didn't have to. I wasn't sure I should have. We walked out of the building and into the mild ocean breeze drifting up from the coastline. I chose the direction toward a small terrace overlooking the water, partly because it was away from the crowds, partly because I needed air, and partly because I didn't trust myself to sit too close to him in an enclosed place. As we reached the terrace, he stopped a few feet away from me, keeping his distance. That alone was new. In our marriage, distance was something I was usually the one trying to navigate or escape from. We stood there quietly for a moment, just the sound of seagulls and faraway waves filling the space. Then he spoke. Right after our divorce, I thought I understood what went wrong. I didn't. I exhaled slowly through my nose, trying not to show how those words sliced through me. I said, "Most people don't. Divorce is messy." It wasn't just messy. His gaze dropped to his hands. It was a collapse I didn't see coming, because I didn't think I needed to change. The honesty stung, maybe because I had once begged for that honesty. I kept telling myself I was fine. I focused on work, on being productive, on pretending emotional distance wasn't killing my relationships, ours included. I crossed my arms, partly against the breeze, partly against the vulnerability creeping up my spine. "Joe, I didn't leave because you weren't perfect. I left because I was becoming invisible." He flinched, a small, involuntary movement, but I saw it. He whispered, "I know. I know that now. And I'm not asking you to pretend the past didn't hurt. I just need to tell you what happened after. I nodded, cautiously. Go on. He took a breath, slow and shaky. He remarried. My stomach tightened. Not from jealousy, but from the sudden reminder that life moved forward, even when it left scars behind. I said quietly, I know. I heard. He said, it lasted 2 years. 2 years of repeating the same mistakes I made with you. Emotional withdrawal, silence, shutting down instead of communicating. And when she left, it hit me that maybe the problem wasn't who I was with. Maybe the problem was me. I looked away at the water shimmering under the late afternoon sun. That admission, simple, raw, and late, felt like a wound reopening because I had seen that version of him. I had lived beside him and I had left because he couldn't name it back then. He said, I started therapy, softly. I turned to him, surprised, every week, for 3 years. 3 years. More time than our marriage had been functional. What did you learn? My voice betrayed a tremor. He swallowed. That I wasn't emotionless. I was scared, terrified that if anyone saw the real me, the vulnerable me, they'd leave. I stared at him, heart thudding. So you hid? Yes, he said. And by hiding from you, I made you feel like you didn't matter, like you were asking for too much when you were just asking for connection. A knot formed in my throat, because that was the truth I had tried so hard to explain to him, the truth he never heard. Joe, I whispered, unsure what to do with the ache rising in my chest. He said, there's more. The reason I came today. I waited. I used to think our marriage fell apart because we weren't compatible, but I finally understood why we really broke. My breath caught. We broke because I didn't fight for us. I didn't know how to fight for myself. And until I learned that, I couldn't love anyone the way they deserved. The weight of that truth settled heavily between us. He stepped 1 inch closer. Not enough to invade my space, but enough that I felt the pull between us, the familiar gravity. Gabrielle, he said, eyes searching mine, I'm not here to get you back. I'm not here to rewrite the past. I'm here because I owed you the truth, and because his voice cracked, barely audible, because losing you was the wake-up call I needed, even if it came too late. I looked down at my hands. They were trembling. This wasn't the man I divorced. This was someone else. Someone who had lived through regret and come out the other side changed, humbled, softer, more aware. The worst part? I felt something shift inside me, the tiniest crack in the shield I'd built. Why tell me now? He hesitated again, longer this time, because there's something you don't know, something I didn't find out until after we were already over. My heart stumbled. Something about me? About who I became when you left? And what it cost me? I felt cold suddenly, the breeze no longer gentle. What are you talking about? I asked, barely breathing. He lifted his eyes to mine, full of something deep and unsettling. Gabrielle, I need to tell you what really happened after you walked away. And that was the moment I realized his truth wasn't just an apology. It was a revelation that could change everything I thought I knew about our marriage.
The breeze shifted as he said those words, sharp enough to make me wrap my arms around myself, though the cold wasn't really from the wind. Something in his tone told me this wasn't a confession about therapy or regret. this was different. He looked like a man about to reopen a wound he'd spent years stitching shut. I forced my voice to stay steady. "Joe, what happened?" He rubbed the back of his neck. A familiar gesture, one I remembered from our marriage. He used to do it when something overwhelmed him, but he didn't want to say it out loud. Except now, he looked ready to speak, ready to stop hiding. "After you left," he began slowly, "I didn't fall apart right away. I thought I was fine, really fine, too fine. I told myself I was finally free to focus on work and productivity." A humorless smile ghosted across his lips. And then everything I was holding together just collapsed. I stayed quiet, letting the waves fill the silence between us. He exhaled. "The truth is, I didn't know how to be alone with myself. I had spent years avoiding every uncomfortable feeling by burying myself in tasks, projects, deadlines. When you walked away, all the noise disappeared, and what was left was," he hesitated, "was me, and I didn't like who I saw." My throat tightened, not out of pity, but out of recognition. I knew what it felt like to confront a version of yourself shaped by heartbreak. Personal growth often starts in the moments when your life crumbles, not when it flourishes. He looked at me then, eyes unguarded. "But that's not the truth I need to tell you." I felt my pulse in my ears. "Then what is it?" He swallowed hard. "A few months after the divorce, I shut down completely. Not emotionally, physically. My breath caught. Physically?" He nodded. "Stress, burnout, whatever you want to call it. I collapsed during a meeting at work. They found out my blood pressure was sky high, my sleep was non-existent, and I had been running on caffeine, deadlines, and emotional denial for too long." My heart twisted. "Joe, why didn't you tell me? We were still... the divorce wasn't hostile. You could have called." He looked away, jaw tight. "I was ashamed. I didn't want you to think I was right about me, even though you were." The honesty hit me like a tide. "Joe." "And after the ER scare," he continued, "a work-mandated evaluation recommended therapy. At first I refused, but then..." He laughed softly, bitterly. "Then one night I opened the drawer where I kept all the paperwork you used to organize. Your handwriting was still on a Post-it note you had left behind. 'Remember to rest.'" I froze. He let the silence linger before finishing. I realized I didn't know how. A long breath slipped out of me. Painful, familiar, overwhelming. "But that's still not all," he said. I stared at him, shaken. "What else could there be? This part, it's embarrassing, but it changed everything, and I need you to hear it." He leaned against the railing, staring at the waves like they held the courage he needed. "After I started therapy, I was asked to write a list of the biggest regrets in my life. My therapist wanted me to be honest and raw. Her words." He smiled faintly. "I wrote 22 things, but the top 3 were all related to you." I blinked. "To me?" "Yes." His voice didn't shake, but mine almost did, as I asked, "What were they?" He took a breath, then met my eyes with unbearable sincerity. "1, I regret making you feel alone when you were right beside me. 2, I regret choosing silence every time you begged me to talk. And 3, he paused, voice breaking, "I regret letting my fear matter more than our love." Something in my chest cracked open. Not pain, not forgiveness, something in between, something fragile and dangerous.
He continued before I could speak. "You ask me why I told you all of this now." He stepped closer, a single step, still giving me choice, still leaving space. "Because for years, I tried to see our divorce as a failure, but therapy made me realize it wasn't just that." He swallowed. "It was a wake-up call I ignored until it cost me everything." My lips parted. "Everything?" He nodded. "My second marriage, my mental health, friendships I pushed away, opportunities I sabotaged because I was scared of being seen. And then, the worst part." He looked down, then back up slowly. "I realized I had spent years trying to forget you, but every version of my life without you felt incomplete.
The words punched the air from my lungs. He stepped back then, as if afraid he'd said too much. I'm not telling you this to make you come back. I'm telling you because you deserved the truth back then, and I didn't give it to you. I felt my eyes sting. I blinked hard. Joe, I don't even know what to say. You don't have to say anything. He inhaled deeply. Just tell me if you believe that I've changed, even a little. I looked at him, really looked at him. The man before me wasn't the man I left. There was vulnerability in him now, visible and unsettling. He wasn't hiding behind logic or walls or silence. He was standing open, and I didn't know what terrified me more, believing him or not believing him. My voice barely escaped my lips. I think you're different, yes, but change is one thing, Joe. Trust is another. He nodded, as if he expected that answer, and then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, just for a second, but I saw the name flash across it, a woman's name. His expression shifted, not guiltily, not nervously, but something complicated. I felt the air thicken. Joe, I whispered, who is that? He lowered the phone slowly, eyes lifting to mine, and the way he looked at me told me one thing. There was more to his story, much more, and it had a name. The name on his phone burned into my mind, even though I only saw it for a split second. A woman's name. Simple. Familiar. Beautiful in the way names can be beautiful when you don't want them to belong to someone important. My throat tightened, and I hated that it did. Joe lowered the phone slowly, not breaking eye contact. His expression wasn't guilty, but it wasn't indifferent either. It was something else. Something I couldn't decipher. Something that scared me more than the name itself. I felt my pulse in my fingers. Who is that? I asked softly. He hesitated. Not long, but long enough. Her name is Emily. Emily. A simple name with a weight I didn't understand yet. I nodded, forcing my voice to remain steady. And she is... He inhaled. She's someone from my life. Someone who was there after everything fell apart. His tone wasn't evasive, but it wasn't complete either. It was something else. Something I couldn't decipher. Something that scared me more than the name itself. I felt my pulse in my fingers. Joe, are you seeing her? I whispered. The pause was brief, maybe a second, but to my heart, it felt like an hour. He said quietly. For a while. Was. The word echoed in my head, both comforting and alarming. He continued, it ended months ago. Before I knew I'd see you again. Before I got on a plane. Before any of this. His honesty hit me hard because I believed him, and that frightened me more than anything else. I looked out over the water, letting the ocean fill the silence, while I tried to steady myself. I didn't want to feel the flicker of jealousy. I didn't want to feel anything resembling possessiveness. We were divorced. We had lived separate lives. We had no claim on each other. But hearing him talk about another woman made something sharp twist inside me. Why did it end? I asked. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he ran a hand through his hair, then leaned on the railing as if gathering the right words. He said finally, because I wasn't fully present. Not with her. Not with myself. I was trying to convince myself I was ready for a relationship, but I wasn't. And she knew? I asked. He nodded. She said I always felt halfway there, like part of me was somewhere else or with someone else. My stomach tightened. He looked at me then, eyes steady, honest, unbearably vulnerable. He said, she asked me one night if I was still in love with you. My breath hitched. What did you say? I whispered. He shook his head slowly, painfully. He said, I didn't answer because I didn't know. Or maybe I did know and I wasn't ready to face it.
A soft, tremulous breath escaped my lips. This was too much. Too close. Too raw. Gabrielle, he added gently, I didn't come here to drag you into a triangle. Ending things with her wasn't about you. It was about being honest with myself. And what is that honesty telling you now? I asked before I could stop myself. He stepped closer. Not too close, but close enough that the air between us shifted. Seeing you again, he swallowed. It feels like waking up, like my heart remembered something my mind spent years trying to forget. My eyes stung. I blinked hard. This wasn't fair. He wasn't allowed to say things like that. Not while my heart was still tender, still rebuilding, still learning how to trust its own voice again. I stepped back, needing space. Joe, I don't know what you want from me. He nodded slowly, respectfully. I don't want anything. Not a relationship, not a promise, not forgiveness. I just want you to know the truth. And I want whatever comes next to be honest. No pressure, no expectations. I closed my eyes briefly. That was the hardest part. He wasn't trying to manipulate me. He wasn't begging. He was simply being present, a version of him I had longed for during our marriage. When I opened my eyes, the breeze had picked up, tugging at my hair. He reached out instinctively, then stopped himself, letting his hand fall. The restraint made my chest ache. I shouldn't feel this, I whispered. What? He asked gently. This pull toward you. My voice cracked. It's familiar. It's dangerous. And it scares me. He lowered his head, then lifted it again with soft determination. I'm scared too, because I know what losing you feels like. We stood there, suspended in the kind of silence that hums with meaning. The ocean roared below us. Seagulls looped over the water. Somewhere music drifted faintly from the hotel patio. But all I felt was him, his presence, his honesty, his regret, and that faint, terrifying flicker of something I thought was long dead. Finally, I forced myself to break the moment. I said, we should go back inside. He nodded. Yeah, but neither of us moved. I turned to walk away, and for the first time since the moment he entered the hall, he didn't follow me. Instead, he stayed by the railing, looking out at the water. I was almost at the door when he called my name. Gabrielle? I turned. He looked at me with a softness that felt like a hand on my heart. There's something else, he said quietly. Something about Emily. I stiffened. What about her? He exhaled, slow, steady, as if preparing to drop a truth that would change the entire direction of the day. Because she didn't just walk away. She left something behind. My breath stopped. Left what? I asked. He looked straight into my eyes. Gabrielle, she left a message, and it's about you.
For a moment, I couldn't move. The words hung between us like fog, dense, confusing, unsettling. She left a message, he said quietly, about you. A breeze brushed across the terrace, cool against my heated skin. I wrapped my arms around myself, not because I was cold, but because something inside me felt suddenly exposed. Why would she leave a message for me? I asked, my voice barely audible. Joe's expression tightened in a way that made my stomach twist. It wasn't addressed to you, not directly, but it's about you, and I think you deserve to know what she said. I hesitated. Joe, if this is something between you and her, it's not. He cut in gently. It's something between all of us. My heart stuttered. He reached for his phone again, this time slowly, as if giving me every opportunity to pull away or run. I didn't move. I watched as he scrolled, jaw tightening the way it used to when he read something difficult. Finally, he found it. A voicemail. He held the phone in his hand but didn't press play yet. She left this on my phone the night she ended things. He paused. Please understand, I wasn't planning to ever show it to you. But after today, after everything we've said, I don't want secrets between us. Not even old ones. My breath felt shallow. Just tell me what she said. He nodded, exhaling. She said she could tell my heart wasn't hers. That whenever I looked at her, it felt like I was looking for someone else. I closed my eyes. God, that hurt in a way I wasn't ready for. He continued, voice soft, almost pained. She said it wasn't fair to her, that she could feel herself competing with a memory, me.
I clenched my jaw, guilt and confusion tangling inside me. Joe, I never wanted to. I know, he said quickly. This isn't on you. She never blamed you. I opened my eyes, meeting his. She ended things because she said she couldn't love someone who hadn't learned to let go of their first heartbreak. Those words hit me like a wave, knocking the air from my chest. She called you my first heartbreak, he added softly. She said it didn't matter that I was older when we met or that I dated before you. You were the first person who ever reached the part of me I never showed anyone. I swallowed, hard. He looked out at the water, as if searching for a steady point. Then she said something that, honestly, Gabrielle, I never expected. Silence clung to us. She said that if I ever saw you again, if life ever put us in the same room, she hoped I wouldn't waste it. I stared at him, stunned. She said you brought out a version of me she wished she'd met, and that maybe the reason things didn't work with her was because there was unfinished business between us. My lips parted, but no sound came out. The breeze felt colder now, wrapping around my spine. Joe ran a hand through his hair, looked at his phone, then back at me. I didn't want to believe she was right. I didn't want my growth to be tied to our past, but when I saw you today, everything shifted. I felt something inside me wake up. His voice cracked just slightly, and the vulnerability in it tugged hard at something deep in my chest. I'm not saying we're meant to be. I'm not saying fate or destiny or any of that. I'm saying, he took a breath. I think she saw something I was afraid to face. I felt myself shaking, not visibly, but inside. The kind of trembling that comes from a truth you've avoided for too long. Why are you telling me this? Why show me that message? His voice was quiet. Because you deserve honesty. Because she was right. And because keeping it from you felt like hiding. I didn't know how to respond. Every part of me felt tangled. Fear, longing, anger, tenderness, confusion. He stepped forward 1 inch, still respecting the space between us. I'm not asking for anything. I'm not trying to pull you into my unfinished mess. I want you to know the whole story, not the version you created in your head for 7 years. You didn't break me, Gabrielle. Life broke me. My choices broke me. You just saw it first. My eyes blurred. I blinked them clear. He watched me with quiet patience, the oceanside wind lifting his hair, softening his expression. There was so much unspoken between us, so much history, so much pain that once filled the cracks where love used to live. I don't know what to do with all of this, I admitted, voice trembling. You're telling me things I never expected to hear again, things I stopped waiting for. He nodded. I know. And I don't know what you want me to say. He took another breath, slow, deliberate. I don't want you to say anything. I don't want to lie to you anymore. I turned away, staring out at the waves crashing against the rocks below. The sky was starting to tint with late afternoon gold, the kind that makes everything look softer than it feels. A single question rose in my chest, quiet, but impossible to ignore.
"Joe," I said, still facing the ocean, "if you saw me today and something shifted, what exactly shifted?" He didn't answer immediately. The silence stretched thin and aching. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "It wasn't something that shifted, Gabrielle. It was everything." My heart stuttered painfully in my chest. But before I could speak, before I could decide whether to run towards him or away from him, someone called my name from the doorway. "Gabrielle?" I turned. It was my coworker, Emily, a different Emily, and standing right beside her was someone I absolutely did not expect to see, someone connected to my past, someone who would complicate everything.
I felt my heart stop, not metaphorically, not dramatically, but in that quiet, internal jolt that only happens when a memory suddenly takes physical form right in front of you. Standing next to my coworker wasn't just anyone. It was Daniel Hayes, a name I hadn't said out loud in years, a face I hadn't prepared to see today, or maybe ever again. He approached slowly, almost cautiously, like I was something fragile he didn't want to disturb. His expression was warm but uncertain, eyes searching mine as if checking whether he was welcome in this moment or intruding on something sacred. Which, in a way, he was. "Gabrielle?" he said again, softer now. "Wow, it really is you." My pulse hammered against my ribs. I forced a breath, then another. "Daniel, Hi." Joe turned, and the shift in his posture was immediate. He straightened fully, the way men do when something inside them tightens. His eyes flicked from Daniel to me and back again. Daniel noticed the tension, but took a respectful step back, giving me space. "I didn't mean to interrupt. Your coworker recognized my name on the sign-in list and mentioned you were here. I couldn't believe it." He gave a tentative smile, one that held years of history in it. Joe's silence grew heavier. I stepped forward, needing to take control of the moment before it spiraled. "It's good to see you," I said honestly. "Really unexpected, but good." Daniel exhaled with a relieved laugh. "Yeah, unexpected is an understatement." He glanced at Joe then, offering a polite nod. "Sorry, I'm not sure if I'm interrupting something." Before I could speak, Joe answered. "We were talking," he said, not unkindly, but carefully. "But it's okay." Daniel raised his eyebrows slightly, reading the subtext, no doubt, but didn't push. My coworker, realizing she'd walked into something complicated, quickly excused herself. "I'll leave you to catch up. Gabrielle, when you're free, they're ready for the afternoon panel." "Thank you," I said, grateful for the out when I needed it. She disappeared, leaving a triangle of silence in her wake. Daniel shoved his hands into his pockets, a familiar gesture from a lifetime ago. "Gabrielle and I go way back," he said, glancing at Joe as if offering context. "College days." "College," Joe repeated, voice neutral, but eyes sharp. "Yeah," Daniel said, looking back at me. "We used to be, well, pretty close." My stomach fluttered. It wasn't a romantic flutter. It was the flutter of, oh God, how do I hold all of this at once? Because yes, we had been close. Too close, maybe, in the months before I met Joe. Daniel had been my almost, the person I was nearly brave enough to love before life took us in different directions. Joe shifted his weight, jaw tightening. I didn't know that. I swallowed. It was a long time ago. Daniel smiled softly. Feels like 5 lifetimes ago. He looked older, but in a gentler way. Laugh lines, warmer eyes, a steadier presence. Time had been kind to him. And seeing him again stirred something unexpected in me. Not romantic longing, not regret,
but a kind of bittersweet nostalgia. He symbolized a version of myself I barely remembered. Daniel looked between us again. You two seem in the middle of something important. We were catching up, I said quickly. Joe didn't break eye contact with Daniel. We were talking about the past. Daniel nodded slowly. Ah, that's always delicate territory. I laughed nervously. You could say that. A silence stretched, awkward and heavy. I stepped back from the railing, needing to breathe. Daniel, what are you doing here? Are you presenting? I'm keynoting tomorrow on emotional literacy in educational environments. I blinked. Emotional literacy? Since when? He chuckled. Since I realized I spent 30 years avoiding my feelings. Figured I should do something useful with the aftermath. Joe's jaw ticked. Barely, but enough for me to notice. Daniel continued. I actually tried reaching out last year. I wasn't sure if you wanted to reconnect, so I didn't push. Guilt pricked me. I remembered the email. I'd read it, hesitated, then buried it under the weight of old wounds and unresolved fears. I saw it, I admitted. I wasn't ready. Daniel nodded, compassion softening his expression. I get it, truly. Joe shifted again. How long did you two... He didn't finish the sentence, but the unspoken question hung in the air.
Daniel looked at me, giving me control of the answer. We weren't together, I said. We were friends, almost more than friends. But life got in the way. Life, Daniel echoed with a smile. Mostly her meeting someone else. Joe's eyes snapped to mine. I held his gaze, heart pounding. Daniel didn't say it with bitterness, just truth, a gentle truth, a reminder of the person I used to be before heartbreak and rebuilding reshaped me. Joe's voice was quiet, but it carried weight. That someone else was me. Daniel nodded respectfully. Yeah, and I'm glad she found love, even if it wasn't with me. The honesty in his tone made something twist sharply inside me. He wasn't trying to provoke. He wasn't trying to claim anything. He was simply acknowledging what had been. The air felt heavy with unsaid things. Joe stepped closer, not to Daniel, but to me. Gabrielle, can we talk privately? His voice was calm, but there was an undercurrent I recognized. Not jealousy, not fear, something deeper, a need to understand where he stood. I looked between them, the man from my past and the man from my heartbreak. Daniel sensed it immediately. He should go, he said. Really, we can catch up later, Gabrielle. As he turned, he paused. It's genuinely good to see you again. You look happy. Happy. The word pierced me in a way I didn't expect. He walked away, leaving a strange mix of warmth and confusion in the air. Then it was just me and Joe, and the look in Joe's eyes was everything I wasn't ready for. Raw, searching, unsettled. Why didn't you tell me about him? Joe asked quietly. I stiffened. We weren't together. It wasn't a secret. It was just the past. He stepped closer, voice low. But he still matters to you. My breath hitched. Not the way you think. Then how? He asked, eyes locked onto mine. Because the way he looked at you. Gabrielle, that wasn't just nostalgia. My heart thudded painfully. Joe, he's just someone I cared about once. And me? He whispered. What am I now? The question gutted me. I don't know. I wish I did. He exhaled shakily, the vulnerability in his eyes almost unbearable. I need to tell you something else. Something I didn't plan to say today. Joe, it's about us. About why seeing Daniel just now terrified me. My breath caught. He stepped closer, just inches away now, because I realized something. Something I didn't expect. Something I probably have no right to say. Wind shifted between us, warm and electric. Joe, don't.
But he was already speaking. Gabrielle, I'm still in love with you. The world went quiet. Too quiet. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't think. He stepped closer, just inches away. His presence warm, careful, trembling with a truth he wasn't sure he was allowed to say twice. Gabrielle, he whispered, as if my name itself was the only thing anchoring him to the moment. My heart raced. My breath came shallow. Everything in me felt suspended. Every fear, every longing, every memory rising to the surface at once. He looked at me like I was the last unanswered question in his life. Just tell me one thing, he murmured, voice shaking. Are you afraid of me or of what you feel when I'm this close? My chest tightened. I opened my mouth, not to run, not to deny, but to finally speak the truth I'd avoided for years. But before a single word left my lips, the conference hall doors opened behind me. Gabrielle, they're ready for you in the panel room. The spell broke. Reality rushed back in. I turned toward the voice, blinking hard, trying to steady myself. Then I looked back at Joe. He wasn't moving, wasn't forcing anything, just watching me, with eyes full of something terrifyingly honest. I swallowed, my voice barely a whisper. Joe, after the panel, we finished this conversation. A quiet breath of relief escaped him. I'll be right here, he said, and I walked away, pulse racing, hands shaking, knowing the next words we exchanged might change everything.
For a long moment after Daniel walked away, silence stretched between us, heavy, charged, almost electric. The ocean winds picked up, brushing over my skin like a warning, or a promise, or something in between. Joe stood a few feet from me, shoulders tight, hands tense at his sides, eyes fixed on the ground as if afraid of what would happen if he looked directly at me again. I wasn't sure I wanted him to look at me either. Not when his confession, "I'm still in love with you," was still echoing through my entire body. Not when seeing Daniel again stirred ghosts I never meant to revisit. Not when everything felt fragile enough to break with one wrong breath. Finally, Joe exhaled, long and shaky. I didn't plan any of this. Not today. Not this conversation. Not seeing him. I stayed still, my voice low. Neither did I. He nodded, jaw clenching. I know. Another silence passed. I could hear nothing but the ocean and the faint thudding of my pulse. You didn't answer me, he said, eyes lifting slowly. When I asked what I am to you now, his voice wasn't demanding or desperate. It was afraid. And that, more than anything, unsettled me. I swallowed. I didn't answer because I don't know. Because I'm trying to understand what's real and what's nostalgia. And because I'm scared of saying the wrong thing. His gaze softened with something that made my chest ache. You can say anything, Gabrielle. That's the problem. Anything feels dangerous right now. He took a slow step toward me, careful, like approaching a wild animal he didn't want to startle. I understand, he said softly, but there's something you still need to know, something I didn't tell you, and if I don't say it now, I never will. My breath hitched. Joe, please don't make this more complicated. He gave a sad, almost defeated smile. It already is. He reached for the railing and leaned against it, staring out at the rolling waves. When I told you there was something I hadn't said, it wasn't about someone else, or about my past. It wasn't about Emily, or therapy. It was about me. I frowned gently. You said you came today because something happened last month. He nodded but didn't turn. Yes, he swallowed, and it changed everything for me. A cold flutter of worry slid down my spine. What happened? He was silent for a long time. Too long. Long enough for fear to bloom in my chest. Finally, he spoke. I had a health scare. A pretty serious one. The air left my lungs. What kind of scare? He turned toward me now, and for the first time since our divorce,
I saw something in him I had never seen before, pure fear. He said, the kind that makes you reevaluate your entire life, the kind that makes you sit in a doctor's office and confront every regret you've been avoiding for 7 years. My knees weakened. He didn't rush, didn't dramatize. He just told the truth. They found something during a routine exam, something that didn't look right. My fingers tightened on the railing. Oh my God, Joe, what? They ran more tests, more scans. He took a slow breath. The waiting nearly broke me. His voice cracked. So subtly, but enough. He said, I had never been so alone, and all I could think about was you. My heart twisted painfully.
He looked away again. I'm okay now. Really. The latest results were clear, but those weeks, he shook his head. They forced me to face things I kept buried. Things about who I was, who I am, what I lost, what I ran from, what I destroyed. A tear slipped down my cheek before I could stop it. He noticed. I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want you to think I was using it or trying to get sympathy. He rubbed the back of his neck. I'm telling you because that moment, those weeks, they made me realize how much time I wasted not saying what mattered. He took a small step toward me, voice trembling. I realized that living without you wasn't healing, it was hiding. My breath faltered, and the thought of dying, before telling you the truth, his voice finally broke. That terrified me more than any diagnosis. Everything inside me shook. Joe, I whispered. He looked at me then, fully, deeply, painfully. I didn't come to fix the past. I came because I realized I never gave us a real chance. I never showed up for you the way you needed, and losing you became the story of my life, not because you left, but because I never fought for you. My chest tightened painfully, and when I saw you today, I felt something shift inside me, not because of fear, not because of regret, but because he took a breath that trembled. Because I realized I still love you the way I was supposed to love you back then. Tears blurred my vision. I don't expect anything, he added quickly. Not forgiveness, not a second chance, not even hope. I just needed you to know why I came, and why I can't pretend anymore. The ocean roared louder, wind picking up as if dramatizing the confession I never imagined hearing. I stepped toward him without thinking. Just one step, just enough to feel his presence more fully. He inhaled sharply. Gabrielle! My name from his lips sounded like a prayer. I'm not asking you for a future, he whispered. I'm asking you for a moment, an honest one. I swallowed, barely breathing. What moment? I asked. He took one more step, close enough that I could feel his warmth, but not close enough to touch. A moment where we stop pretending we still exist in each other's hearts. My lips parted, my pulse thundered, my entire body trembled. Joe, I'm scared, I confessed. His expressions softened with a depth that nearly broke me. I know, he whispered. So am I. Silence fell, heavy, tender, terrifying. He looked down, breath shaking. Just tell me one thing, he murmured. I nodded. Are you still running from me? He lifted his eyes, raw, exposed, shimmering. From what you feel when you're with me? My chest collapsed. I opened my mouth, and before a single sound left my lips, someone called from inside the conference hall. Gabrielle, you're needed in the panel room. The spell shattered. I turned toward the door, torn, trembling. When I looked back at him, Joe's eyes held everything he hadn't said yet, and I realized the next words out of my mouth would determine our entire future. The panel room awaited me like reality waiting to reclaim me. People, tasks, a scheduled, contained world where my heartbeat didn't threaten to break through my chest. But behind me was Joe, the man I once loved, the man I lost,
the man who had just opened his entire soul with trembling honesty. I hovered at the doorway, torn between obligation and a truth I'd spent years avoiding. He stood a few steps back, hands in his pockets, watching me with a softness that made my throat tighten. Not expectant, not demanding, just open, as if saying, whatever happens next, I won't run. For the first time in years, the fear inside me shifted. It wasn't an alarm now. It was a question. What if I don't have to run either? I took a breath and turned fully toward him. I'll only be 20 minutes, I said. He blinked, surprised, relief washing across his face in a subtle, fragile way. I'll wait, he whispered. And he did. The panel blurred into a fog. I answered questions, smiled, nodded, but my mind was outside on that terrace, replaying every word he said. I realized living without you wasn't healing. It was hiding. I still love you the way I was supposed to love you back then. Are you running from me or from what you feel when you're with me? When the session ended, applause rippled faintly. I thanked the moderator, shook hands politely, and left with my pulse pounding in my ears. The sun was setting as I stepped onto the terrace again, warm gold spilling over the water, painting everything soft, vulnerable, forgiving. Joe was there, leaning against the railing, looking at the horizon, hands still in his pockets like he didn't trust them not to reach for something they shouldn't. For me. When he heard my footsteps, he turned, and the look he gave me. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't desperate, it wasn't even hopeful. It was honest. Hey, he said quietly. Hey. How was the panel? I exhaled a laugh, a blur, a complete blur. He smiled faintly. Makes sense. I walked closer, not too close, just enough that our shadows touched. The wind lifted a strand of my hair. Joe watched it, then tore his gaze away, respecting the inches between us. For a moment, neither of us spoke, not because we didn't know what to say, because everything we needed to say suddenly felt monumental. At last, I broke the silence. You scared me today, I said softly. He nodded. I scared myself. Not because of your health scare, not even because of the past. My voice wavered. You scared me because I didn't expect to feel anything. Not anymore. His jaw tightened. And you did? I closed my eyes for a second, not to avoid him, but to gather myself, to find the honesty I owed us both. Yes, I did. When I opened my eyes, something unspoken passed through him, like a breath he'd been holding for 7 years finally released. Gabrielle. He took one step closer. Just one. I held up my hand. Let me finish. He stopped instantly. I spent so long protecting myself from you, not because of who you were, but because of who I became when I felt unheard, unseen, unchosen. His face tightened with regret. And leaving you? My voice broke. Leaving you was the hardest thing I ever did, but it also saved me.
He looked down, nodding, absorbing every word. But that woman I used to be, I continued, she's not the same woman standing here now. I'm different. I'm stronger. And I won't lose myself again. Not for you, not for anyone. His eyes lifted slowly. I don't want you to. Tears stung my eyes. Not sad tears, not joyful ones. Tears of release, like a truth that had been waiting too long to breathe. I needed to hear you say what you said today. All of it. The regret, the truth, the fear, the love. He swallowed. I meant every word. I know. Silence again. But this time, it was softer. He stepped closer, carefully, attentively, until he was standing only an inch away, not touching, just existing in that delicate space where presence becomes confession. His voice, when he spoke, was almost a breath. What happens now?
I looked at him, really looked at him. At the man who once broke my heart without meaning to. At the man who rebuilt himself piece by piece. At the man who finally understood love, not as permanence, but participation. And for the first time since our marriage ended, I didn't see the man I left. I saw the man he had become. I don't want to run from you anymore. His breath hitched, his eyes closed, pain and relief breaking through him in the same instant. When he opened them again, something warm, something alive burned there. He reached for my hand slowly, giving me every second to pull away. I didn't. Our fingers intertwined carefully, tenderly, as if rediscovering something familiar we thought we'd lost forever. He stepped closer, forehead nearly touching mine. Gabrielle. My name was a tremor, a plea, a homecoming. And then he kissed me, not with urgency, not with desperation, but with reverence. A long-awaited exhale, a rediscovered truth, a beginning born from everything we survived. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. Maybe we weren't ready back then, he whispered. Maybe not, I said softly. But now? His fingers tightened gently around mine. Now, I finished, we finally are. The ocean kept crashing below us. The sun kept sinking into the horizon. The world didn't pause, but my heart did, in the best possible way. As always, thank you for listening to Possible Hearts. If this emotional story touched you, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Remember, sometimes love comes back not to repeat the past, but to build the future we were too broken to create before.